Hello, honeys. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means, a brand new Beesness. This week was thankfully a little less chaotic than the last several have been. But before we get into today's headlines, I wanted to update you on what all happened Saturday during my first experience kind of leading and co-managing a National History Day competition here in Madison as part of my new job. Not only was I helping to facilitate in terms of doing, judge check-ins and that sort of thing, I also got to do a little bit of judging myself, which was really exciting because seeing some of the students' work, the variety of topics they addressed, and the amount of effort they put into their exhibitions, as that happened to be the category I was judging, was really impressive. And it meant a lot to me to know that I was contributing actively to the next generation of historians and other culture workers by being there. And now, honeys, without further ado, on to the buzz. Our only follow-up for today, Middle East fund managers have joined Sotheby's reconfigured board as part of the Abu Dhabi investment plans. Sotheby's announced back in October of 2024 that it had secured a $1 billion U.S. investment from ADQ, a sovereign wealth fund operated by members of Abu Dhabi's government. This marked a shift away from the historically dominant Western-based money managers and lawyers at its highest levels to a more international makeup. In some ways, this news was expected, as one of the investment stipulations was a reconfiguration of the House's board, but it was unclear at the time how the board would be modified. It remained obvious then, and does still now, that these Middle Eastern financial authorities would significantly affect how the company is run. Sotheby's board is now a 9-person group, with 3 of the seats held by men associated with the Emirati fund. The new members are now publicly confirmed to be the following: H.E. Mohammed Hassan Al-Suwaidi. We also have Murtaza Hussain. The third is Aziz Mulji. We noticed the headline for that reason, and also because of the legal financial aspects of this whole thing. The government of Abu Dhabi was simultaneously listed as a controlling entity of Sotheby's UK office because of ADQ's status as a sovereign wealth fund, which will of course affect their taxes and other legal statuses. What is next is to be determined because members of the 9-person board are detached from the day-to-day operations of Sotheby's and really only have voting power about the house's financial decisions. As is typical of the board, there continues to be no art professionals on it. The company continues to maintain a separate non-voting collector-focused board called Sotheby's International Council as well. Last week also saw thousands publicly calling on Christie's to nix an AI art auction. An open letter published on Saturday, February 8th, expressed deep concerns over Christie's first sale of art made with AI, titled Augmented Intelligence, running February 20th to March 5th. The sale will feature more than 20 works spanning various mediums by artists including Beesness featured Rafiq Anadol, OpenAI's first artist-in-residence Alexander Reben, the late Aaron software creator Harold Cohen, and anonymous AI collaborative artist Claire Silver. The letter, addressed to Christie's digital art sales organizers Nicole Sales-Giles and Sebastian Sanchez, reads in part, quote, "Many of the artworks you plan to auction were created using AI models that are known to be trained on copyrighted work without a license," end quote, and goes on to say the house's support for AI and artists' use of it, quote, "rewards and further incentivizes AI companies' mass theft of human artists' work," end quote. Responses to the letter have been mixed. It has gained more than 4,000 signatories since its publication, yet many, especially artists, are showing support for the AI artists featured in the sale. A Christie spokesperson stated that the works included in the auction, quote, "are using artificial intelligence to enhance their bodies of work," end quote, and that many of the artists already have strong existing multidisciplinary even art practices. Some are even recognized in leading museum collections. One of our sources got the opinion of Matt Dryhurst, who, according to Christie's, along with his wife Holly Herndon, was one of the first, quote, "digital artists ever to be invited by OpenAI to explore text-to-image prompts via DALL-E," end quote. Dryhurst sees the letter as an expression of the desire for a removal of current AI training models and a replacement with opt-in ones like those enshrined in EU laws, a desire for a functional, meaningful artist-AI agreement. Notably, these calls and letters do coincide with the refusals of both the US and the UK to sign an international agreement on so-called inclusive and sustainable AI technology at a landmark AI Action Summit taking place in Paris this week. The agreement was backed by 60 other countries, including China, France, India, and Canada. And while we're on the topic, the Getty Museum, we heard, has acquired its first AI photograph. The work in question is titled Christian en el amor de calle of 2024 by the queer Costa Rican photographer Matías Sauter Morera. It depicts two young Latino men in blue leather jackets with gold embellishments in a cafe or maybe bar setting, and the work is said to recall the queer history of the Pegamachos, who were cowboys from the Guanacaste coast who became renowned for their secret affairs with young gay men. This is likely the reason for a certain intensity in the central figure's outward gaze. Where we encounter a bit of a twist from our last story is that Morera has told Art News that because anonymity is paramount to guarding the Pegamachos' safety, the artist combined multiple AI models in Photoshop to help create the work and therefore hide people's real identities, which allowed him to work without the need for self-censorship. In other words, without intruding on real people's lives or risking their safety. Said Morera, quote, "Since the Pegamachos culture remains hidden, these AI images serve as a mimicry of photography, of fiction, and a medium through which I can imagine and construct an imagined parallel history," end quote. Photography curator Paul Martineau acquired the piece for the Getty Museum, considering it to be a photo rather than a work of AI. We also saw last week that Australia abruptly ditched its Venice Biennale artist and curator, causing new outcry around the situation. The people in question here are Lebanese-born artist Khalid Sabsabi and curator Michael D'Agostino. The former frequently uses video installations and other immersive media works in order to address themes related to his lived experience of migrating from Tripoli to Sydney. He often grapples with Western views of Arab identity. Sabsabi was suddenly dropped on February 13th as Australia's 2026 Venice Biennale representative after a high-profile media publication raised questions about his past artworks and his ability to represent the nation in light of them. Critics pointed to two pieces of Sabsabi's in particular, his 2006 work titled Thank You Very Much, which reappropriated footage of the 9/11 attacks and a press conference with then-President George W. Bush, as well as a 2007 video installation titled You, which features appropriated footage of a leader of the militant group Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, who was assassinated last year. Sabsabi's digitally manipulated version shows Nasrallah addressing a crowd in Beirut after the end of a 2006 war between Lebanon and Israel, with at one point rays of light emerging from his face. The work's owner, the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia, describes this as being, quote, suggestive of a divine illumination, end quote, but purposefully ambiguous as well in order to, quote, play on Western fears of cultural difference and suggest the all-pervasiveness of the public news media and its ability to deify or vilify through the intensive repetition of imagery on our television screens, end quote. A 2018 Vulture magazine profile of Sabsabi states that the artist aimed to view Nasrallah from the point of view of, quote, a Muslim immigrant in an increasingly Islamophobic world, end quote. But an Australian article published the week before last described the piece differently, calling its approach to Nasrallah, quote, questionable and ambiguous, end quote. The article then went on to ask if someone who supports terrorist leaders and boycotts, if he was the right choice for representing the nation. The announcement was made by Creative Australia, the pavilion's federal body organizer, but did not directly mention the controversy. It did explain that the decision was unanimous, even though the announcement of Sabsabi's selection was made only 6 days ago. The organization's statement reads in part, Creative Australia is an advocate for freedom of artistic expression, is not an educator and the interpretation of art. However, the board believes a prolonged and divisive debate about the 2026 selection outcome poses an unacceptable risk to public support for Australia's artistic community, end quote, expressing concern for undermining the goal of bringing Australians together through the arts and creativity. They also promised a review of the selection process. The artist and the curator, D'Agostino, issued a joint statement in which they expressed hope that the Australian art world would not be silent on this matter and stated that art should not be censored as artists reflect the times they live in. We care because, as Art News put it, this headline is the first confirmation that tensions over Israel's war in Gaza will continue to affect the 2026 Biennale. Creative Australia's decision has already provoked an outcry on social media, and on February 14th, several senior officials and staff members at Creative Australia said they resigned in response to the board's cancellation. A UK news outlet also reported that former Venice Biennale Commissioner, Australian investment banker Simon Mordaunt, has resigned as an international ambassador for the event and pulled his financial pledge from the pavilion in support of Sebsabi. The cancellation of Sebsabi's pavilion is seen as a dramatic change of pace for Australia. The country did, after all, win the Golden Lion in 2024 for Archie Moore's pavilion, and their Biennale presentation was expected to be closely watched this year. We also heard that 3 suspects in the heists of famed artworks were found guilty last week. The convictions of 3 members of a multi-heist art theft ring were announced by the United States Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Pennsylvania on February 7th, and the headline gained traction soon after. All 3 are from Pennsylvania and include Nicholas Dombeck, 54, Damian Boland, 48, and Joseph Atsis, 48, for stealing sports memorabilia, art, and other valuable items from 20 museums and stores over the course of 2 decades. Their charges included conspiracy to commit theft of major artwork, concealment and disposal of major artwork, and interstate transportation of stolen property. The ring members would steal the targeted items, transport them back to northeastern Pennsylvania, often to Dombeck's residence, then melt the memorabilia down into easily transportable metal discs or bars to be fenced in the New York area for far less than the memorabilia is worth. 5 additional co-conspirators are awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty. Another former co-defendant, Alfred Atsis, was acquitted at trial of the 3 counts against him. A rather shocking announcement from last week: the New York dealer Brent Sikema's husband was charged with hiring his killer. The federal filing of charges in New York for murder for hire, passport fraud, and conspiracy to murder a person in a foreign country were announced February 11th, almost a year after the stabbing death of New York gallerist Brent Sikema. Sikema had developed a respected reputation in the art world, representing the likes of Jeffrey Gibson, Sheila Hicks, and Kara Walker throughout his career. His body was found with 18 wounds in his Rio de Janeiro apartment in January of 2024. A security camera caught footage of the suspected killer leaving the scene, later identified as Alejandro Triana Perez from Cuba, who eventually confessed to the killing. Perez's lawyer, though, claims he was manipulated into committing the crime, which is possible as, according to a superseding indictment unsealed today, Daniel Sikema paid, quote, approximately $5,000, end quote, to his unnamed, in the federal announcement, co-conspirator. The potential motive here is a custody one. Daniel had reportedly been seeking visitation rights for his and Brent's son amid what was called an increasingly contentious divorce. Said U.S. Attorney Danielle R. Sassoon, quote, as alleged, Daniel Sikema and his co-conspirator planned and carried out a cold-blooded plot to murder Sikema's husband, a United States citizen, in Brazil. This office will doggedly pursue justice against those who murder U.S. citizens, whether at home or abroad, end quote. We also saw Trump's takeover of the Kennedy Center last week, deepening culture workers' concerns. After initiating a major reshuffling of the Board of Trustees on Wednesday, President Trump took over as chairman of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Various media sources reported on Trump's so-called purge of 18 center board members, many of whom were appointed by former President Joe Biden, along with its chairman, David M. Rubenstein, and the following quick installation of Trump loyalists into their roles. Sources also report that Trump has a list of National Archives staff that he plans to, quote, fire in revenge for their so-called involvement with attempting to recover classified material the president stashed away at Mar-a-Lago after his first term. Knowledgeable observers are warning that the current administration's stronghold on influential arts and cultural platforms could have disastrous effects. In one such example, Trump has also fired the head of the National Archives, Colleen Shogan, the first woman to hold the position, only 2 days later, on Friday. She confirmed that no cause or reason was given, and according to a letter sent to the White House by the American Historical Association, which a National Archives official shared with Rolling Stone magazine, quote, dismissal without communicating a reason for doing so to Congress is in fact against the law, end quote. The Washington Post pointed out that actors, authors, and other artists who were scheduled to hold events at the institution have started backing out of their scheduled appearances, even as the cancellation of other events, which are not necessarily related to Trump's actions, have been announced. The cancellations feature multiple prominent arts figures, examples like TV producer Shonda Rhimes, who served as the board's treasurer and resigned, as well as musicians Ben Folds and Issa Rae. The author of our Washington Post source article asks, and I feel the need to echo the question, are these crackdowns maybe less about DEI and maybe more about undermining the nonprofit world in order to cripple or silence groups which have traditionally been independent of government control? We will keep you posted, honeys. Last week also saw accusations against the American Quilters Society about censoring artworks depicting female anatomy. According to the artists and the Studio Art Quilt Association, or SACA, the American Quilters Society, supposedly the world's largest quilting membership organization, has refused to show two artworks from an exhibition titled Color in Context, Red. The two textile works deemed too controversial are a 2022 piece by Laura Shaw-Fiat titled Your Mother, Your Daughter, Your Sister, Your Grandmother, You, and another titled Origin, made in 2023 by Yvonne Iden Scott, which could be interpreted as depicting female anatomy. Shaw-Fiat references abortion access. SACA Executive Director Martha Seilman said that their board president met with the American Quilters Society owner in an attempt to keep the two pieces in the show after being told they would be omitted. Seilman also said they offered to add warning labels even, but were unsuccessful. She's quoted by Hyperallergic saying, the American Quilters Society said that they would either show the exhibition without those two pieces or return the entire exhibition to us, end quote. So SACA withdrew from all of its scheduled American Quilters Society exhibitions. As a result, it notified members on February 2nd in an email that was later posted to its website. We noticed this story because of that ultimatum which was put forth. That's very atypical, and also the sort of censorship concerns here. We are, of course, disappointed by the loss in access to the arts. SACA and the American Quilters Society signed a contract last August to exhibit Color in Context at quilting shows across the country, and now that access is gone. The partnership would have allowed the works to travel to Florida, Missouri, Kentucky, Michigan, and Pennsylvania between mid-February and September, but now with this disagreement, those events have been canceled. We additionally heard last week that a donor to the Savannah Performing Arts Festival has pulled his funding due to drag performances. The first ever edition of the two-week event, which kicked off Monday and includes panels and performances, is in crisis after a major donor pulled funding from the event because the festival includes drag queens and a panel discussion called The Art of Drag. Said the festival's co-founder Rick Garman, quote, we believe the arts are for all and the arts should be diverse and inclusive, and we are proud to be continuing to do that, end quote. As of this recording, they appear to be going on with the show. We heard tons of buzz last week over the fact that a hidden woman's portrait was found beneath a Picasso masterpiece. The Courtauld Institute of Art in London discovered an image of a woman painted earlier, chronologically, beneath the surface of Picasso's portrait of Mato Fernandes de Soto from 1901. It was found by X-ray and infrared imaging done ahead of Cortland's now open exhibition Goya to Impressionism. The artwork itself is important in part because the background features a painting of the open casket of Picasso's close friend, artist Carles Casagemas, whose death by suicide is said to have inspired Picasso's Blue Period, lasting from 1901 to 1904, and was a shift away from Impressionism. His financial struggles in Parisian life were another contributor to that period. The hidden image went undetected for over a century, but there were hints that it was there. Said Barnaby Wright, deputy head of Courtauld Gallery, quote, "We have long suspected another painting lay beneath the portrait of De Soto because the surface of the work has telltale marks and textures of something below," end quote. The figure's importance as well as identity is still being worked out, but the unidentified woman wears a chignon bun while leaning forward on her elbows. The discovery is important, says Wright, because it embodies how, quote, "Picasso's way of working to transform one image into another and to be a stylic shapeshifter would become a defining feature of his art, which helped make him one of the giant figures of art history," end quote. Another example of this sort of painting below a painting is found in his work The Blue Room from 1901. Infrared images of that piece have revealed a portrait of an unknown man beneath the iconic painting of a woman bathing. We also heard that American artist Micheline Thomas has designed a race car for a female-led motorsport team. The initiative-driven artists racing team, or DART Car, was co-founded by entrepreneur Zoe Berry, art advisor Spring McManus, and professional race car driver Aurora Strauss. The initiative aims to showcase female achievements in both traditionally male-dominated fields of the arts and motorsports, as the organization reports that only 4% of motorsport drivers are women. They were inspired in part by the BMW art car, most recently designed by Ethiopian artist Jolie Meretu in May of 2024. The initiative will debut with a McLaren Artura GT4 wrapped in Thomas's original artwork to be unveiled February 18th at the Classic Car Club Manhattan of New York. But the artist's contributions extend beyond the car. Thomas has also designed bespoke driving suits and hand-painted helmets for the team. Said the artist, quote, "I'm passionate about the intersection of art and women in sports. This collaboration with Dart Car embodies the perfect union of art and feminism as a potent fusion of creativity, speed, and female empowerment, challenging stereotypes by inspiring innovation and redefining the boundaries of power and beauty of women in the driver's seat," end quote. And finally, the maverick painter and critic Walter Robinson, who helmed ArtNet magazine, passed at 74. This occurred Sunday at his home in New York, and according to his wife, the painting conservator Lisa Rosen, the cause was cancer. Art News writes, quote, "Robinson was one of those exceedingly rare figures who always managed to be up to something new and intriguing. When he was not writing for art magazines, Robinson was on social media offering unconventional and usually generous commentary on goings-on about town," end quote. That is what I have for you this week, honeys. I hope you have enjoyed. Hope you're enjoying the week, staying warm. It is in the single digits for me here in Madison, so I am layered up like a burrito. As always, take care of yourselves, hydrate or dihydrate, and we will talk soon as we're going to be dropping a brand new guest special for you Thursday. Don't miss it. Hope you'll be tuning in then. This podcast is produced, created, hosted, formerly edited, and fact-checked by master's degree holder Celia Bugno. Chris Meinhold is responsible for our editing, mixing, and our intro and outro music. And as always, remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, so on all your favorite listening as well as social media channels.